Welcome, friends. I don't have a script, so this is just a voiceover, all the different video content in order of restoring this 98-year-old oud. This is a very nerve-wracking moment for anyone who just finished making a soundboard or an instrument. It's putting the strings on for the first time. And the question is, how will it sound? More on that later. The work I have going on right away, immediately, and I just started to get back to work actually after all this time. I'm restoring this 1927 Toufic Nahat, and I'm going to be putting on a new soundboard, which I'm working on right now, which is going to be this one. I started working on this. This is a new one, and I have the original bone rosettes from 1927. We're going to be going here. I have an inlay going here. I'll show you. This is the inlay for that one. It's going to be in there soon. And so that's for this project. So this oud here came into my shop in 2018. It's an all original 1928 Toufic Nahat featuring the mother of pearl fingerboard that I thought was very beautiful. And I restored it fully, and you can hear Michael Ibrahim playing it here. So of course that was after the restoration. This oud belonged to the gentleman's father, and it was in the family for many years, and I think it was under a state of neglect. As you can see, their main rosettes are actually bone, and all the rosettes, even the small ones, which are very fragile. It features these diamond inlays around the sound hole, the main one, and on the pickguard, and also features some tiles, some mosaic tiles around the binding on the edge and on the fingerboard. I had already copied that stuff a while back on a previous Toufic Nahat restoration. That beautiful 1927 Toufic Nahat with the bone fingerboard, I replaced the soundboard on. It wasn't the original one that I replaced. That was replaced by Toufic Azhar in Brooklyn, a Syrian living in Brooklyn at the turn of the century. That I had to replace the soundboard. In order to do that, I wanted to be an authentic replica and true to the original. So I had to reproduce the diamonds around the sound hole, as you see here, and the tiles that go around the edge, the mosaic tiles that go around the edge of the bowl and around the fingerboard. So I had those on hand for this project, which was another 1927 Toufic Nahat. I know, he keeps coming back to me, and I think there was a couple others. So the oud in question was a 1927 Toufic Nahat that needed a soundboard, and it had the original rosettes. You'll see them in a moment. At this stage, I already knew the size of the sound holes because I had the bone rosettes, as I mentioned, and I already did some inlays around the sound hole. Here I'm thickness sanding them, and we are now ready to inlay our diamond inlays, and I have another decorative inlay above them that I'm going to add. That's kind of classic on other Nahat ouds. I use a violin maker's knife to cut the channels for the inlays. I then chisel out the edges and to remove the material where the inlay will go into. That chisel has to be razor sharp, and by the way, here it's not. I just moved and the one thing I haven't done when I moved my entire shop was sharpen all of my tools. So shame on me. My master, my old German master, would come and be very upset. I mean, if he came to my shop, certainly he would check the sharpness of my knives and chisels. That's kind of customary. That's how you test a luthier, by the way, and how good they are if their tools are sharp. Wonder what that says about me. So anyway, the channels are cut for the rosettes, and here I'm fitting them. Each inlay goes into a very specific slot because each piece of wood, even though it's made as perfect as you can, there's some variations. So I make sure they go exactly where they're supposed to go. At this point, it's time to glue them in. So regular yellow glue is used, and they're fitted, and they will be clamped. I don't use hide glue. I don't use fish glue for this. This one I use yellow glue. Actually, I use yellow glue most of the time. It's a big debate, but instruments I've made over 15 years ago are fine that were made from yellow glue. Some people say sound and this and that. It's not true. I prefer yellow glue actually because it has a higher melting point for the temperature, meaning like if you leave in your car, I believe yellow glue is about 160 degrees, where hide glue can start melting at 120, 30, 40. All right, so they're all clamped, and at this point it's been sitting for a couple hours, so I released the clamps. Those are actually guitar maker's clamps, but you can use them for anything. Here they're great for clamping just the inlay down. I bought those years ago when they were cheap, and now I looked at the price. Well, they weren't even cheap back then, but now they're crazy. I said, oh my goodness. Thank God I invested in all these tools years ago. I feel bad for a luthier starting out now. So they are still high, those inlays. They'll have to be taken down. You can plane them down, you can chisel them down, and then use the thickness sander. Here I am using the thickness sander. Can't live without this tool, I'll tell you that. If you forget to turn on the dust collector with this, you'll have a big cloud. It'll be like Pompeii. So this is something I do with my guitars. I wait till I hear that at peak sheet metal sound, and that will be where I stop. This is a video of me routing a channel that goes into the peg box block and about 3/4 of the way into the neck, and I insert a hard piece of wood after in there, and it makes the peg box joint very strong. The fingerboard will sit on top of it, and you will never know it's there.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Look at her, ain't she pretty?
Triumph Motorcycles, with our state-of-the-art flagship model, the Vergara 900. Ain't she purdy, he says oftenly.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. I love motorcycles. When I glue something and I'm waiting, I hop on the bike and take a ride and come back. So here I already glued the pick guard. I had to copy it from an original from the photo previously, the shape. I didn't have this one on hand. I've had others from Toufic and other Nahat, but I never used this one before. Use it on this project. Here I'm sanding the inlay that went in the middle, the diamond inlay, which is very common for Nahat to do that. Most Arab makers do some type of mosaic inlay there. Kind of highlights the pick guard. You don't have to do it. It's completely aesthetic. The next part, a lot of people are going to like, where you just vacuum all the sawdust. Isn't that satisfying? Who is that man? That's the guy that invented Whole Foods. Big on virtue, even bigger on quinoa. At this stage, I did some routing. I routed the edge where the mosaic tiles will go around the binding. Well, if I remember correctly, I think I routed too deep. So I'm just checking the depth and how am I going to recover. Yes, I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. Turned out to be okay. So I was able to proceed without really having to rectify much. I got lucky. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you make mistakes that you can recover from. Sometimes you make mistakes that you have to do something to recover from. And sometimes you make mistakes that you cannot recover from. That's the nature of it. Note the hard piece of maple in the middle of the neck. Alright, now we are on to the fun part. I have on a piece of walnut veneer the pattern for the fingerboard, and I'm laying out all the mother of pearl pieces, and in between the mother of pearl pieces are black purfling that go in between. They serve as black lines. They're dyed sycamore. It's not ebony, but it is a hard piece of wood that's dyed black. And this was a full day of me wearing a respirator because the mother of pearl dust is incredibly harmful to your lungs. And it was about a full day to do this fingerboard, a full day plus of cutting these pieces of mother of pearl, getting them the perfect shape, fitting them, gluing them, and getting it really perfect, or as perfect as I could. And actually, to do this, I made a lot of waste. You see, I had quite large pieces of mother of pearl, maybe 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Oddly shaped they come. And instead of cutting each one with a jeweler's saw, I just drew the pattern on each one, which they're small pattern. You see, they're about 1 inch by maybe 1/4 inch. I used like a type of tile cutters to cut off most of the material because it would be just too much to cut. Here I'm using my my sanding wheel, my disc sander rather, to shape the mother of pearl pieces. And my fingers are very close to the sandpaper. My phone, as you can see, decided to start zooming out because it's more focused on my shoulder. But I assure you that there's some intricate work happening here. And also, the mother of pearl pieces get really hot, like metal. So you have to back off and wait. And as you can see, I'm wearing my respirator. I am using dust collection, okay? I am using dust collection. But the whole shop, I had to get a strong fan and blow the air out of the garage door because it was just, the smell was so strong and the particles were in the air. Do not breathe that in ever. Here we have now some progress going. I think I was already a few hours into this. I use CA glue. It bonds very good with mother of pearl and fast. Nahat did not have this. I really don't even know what they used. You cannot use hide glue. So who knows? But this is a wonderful glue for this. It's also a wonderful glue to get your fingers stuck to everything. And then anything like a phone or a safely lock to get in your house that uses a thumbprint won't recognize your thumbprint anymore because it's going to change. The crazy glue stays on your hands, on your fingerprint, and changes it. Not really permanently, but then I use pumice stone to clean it off, and then I have no print, and it has to grow back. So those are some of the problems I have in my life. I actually put wax on that little stick before pushing that, and the wax prevents the CA glue to stick to that piece of wood because I don't want that piece of wood being a part of the fingerboard design. And here we have Dulce, our sweet Dulce, first time cutting mother of pearl, and actually she did brilliantly here. So good that I told her that her hands were steady enough to be a luthier, so that her future in luthiery has actually been in the talks. And how exciting would that be to have her work in the shop with me? Basic motor skills is something you look for in a luthier. At this stage, finally, the fingerboard is done. And I am now gluing the mosaics that go along the edge. There's about 38 for both sides of this fingerboard, if I'm not mistaken. That's what you need. And for that, I will use yellow glue. It's sufficient to glue that since it is maple and rosewood that makes up that pattern. Also, between the mosaic and the mother of pearl is a purfling of black, white, black. Probably can't see it so well. Maybe you can see it on the right side. But for me, that detail was important since actually Toufic did use that purfling strip between the mosaic and the mother of pearl. I don't know why, but just for design, I guess, aesthetics, which obviously he was concerned with. This is the last piece going on. It's a partial piece. It'll have to get cut later after it's glued, but it's a very good feeling to finish this. They'll need to sit for a few hours, a couple hours to dry before I can level it, because actually that binding is higher than the mother of pearl. So it'll have to get planed down or sanded down to the same level. You can't have any bumps on that fingerboard. People think that mother of pearl have bumps in them. It doesn't if you do it right. And it's a wonderful material to play off of. And it's harder than any wood. It's harder than ebony, and it lasts much longer. This next part is tricky. So this is the inlay. I don't know what to call it, a heart or a beard. I don't know the name of this part in Arabic. I should have found out before doing this. But Dulce produced some of the longer pieces of that, and it comes together. I'm adding a black line, and I'm using CA glue, which is it's great for this. The black line's important because the mother of pearl is a light color, and so is the soundboard, and it just won't look right aesthetically. So you have to add a black line for contrast, and Toufic does this himself, so obviously I have to do it as well, and it makes sense. You have to work fast and move your fingers around a lot because your fingers are going to stick due to the crazy glue. It sticks very fast on skin. I keep one end compressed against my bench hook, and it starts to hold, and you have to keep applying pressure. As you can see, it's starting to stay. And I really want to get a bee stinger on the point, like a pointy, sharp end on the bottom of that inlay. I don't want it to be blocky or square. So it's tricky. You have to make sure you cut it and file it to be kind of sharp. You want that point to go to 0. So it's overhanging now, but I will cut it. I really don't know what this decorative piece serves, even if it doesn't have the mother of pearl. It's just aesthetic. You don't really need it, but an oud would look strange without it. Of course, this is for ouds that do not have an extended fingerboard. Some people do the extended fingerboards and put them in there now. I don't know why, but it's just a design feature, I guess. At this stage, I already traced where it's going to go, and now with my violin maker's knife, I'm going to cut where it's going to be inlaid. This really takes a very steady hand and a very sharp tool, and that one is dull. Again, shame on me, folks. I will sharpen my tools soon, don't worry. The first cut is the most difficult. And then you have a small track to ride in. And then each cut, it gets easier. And then you can start pressing harder and harder. Essentially, I do need to go to the depth of the inlay itself, because that inlay is mother of pearl. And if it's higher than the spruce and I go sand it, the sanding is gonna remove the spruce more than the mother of pearl. And then I have a major problem. So you want to do as little sanding as possible. Now it's time to set the router with a spiral downcut bit, which will remove the material for that inlay. You could chisel it out, and I did that for years, but frankly, time is money, so I have no problem using a router. Nahat would have used a router if they have one, believe me. Now check the height, the depth rather, and we're ready to go. Now we'll do the routing here. And I make that area dark so I can see where it's being removed. Since it's really hard to see underneath, anything helps. And I get pretty close, and then I'll probably finish with a chisel most of the time. That's the safe way to do it. Don't cut into the outer area or the mother of pearl there. Our inlay is ready to be inlaid. I'm going to use a medium viscosity CA glue here. I don't use wood glue for mother of pearl. CA glue, which is crazy glue, comes in different thicknesses, different viscosities. So that one's a medium one. You can use a really thin viscosity. This is the medium. Don't inhale this stuff and try not to get it on your hands. Any excess that squeezes out, I will wipe out immediately because it hardens like glass. And it's much easier to remove in this stage than it would be later on after it hardens and cures. Small tap with the mallet, just make sure it's seated. And I'm going to clamp it in place. That piece of wood is an offshoot from one of the small rosette sound holes. And I waxed it up so it doesn't become a part of that inlay. And just kind of a basic clamping scheme, not tremendous amount of pressure. That's all that's needed there. So you're probably wondering why I'm taking a sanding stick to the oud. Well, when I glued those mosaic tiles, actually they overhang about a 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter. And so I have to sand them down to match the edge of the fingerboard and around the whole bowl. If you make them smaller, that's stupid and it's just bad quality. And if I leave them like this, you'll feel them, and that's also bad quality work. So a lot of care goes into making sure that you're sanding or filing in an exact correct angle you need. It looks like I'm sanding the crap out of this neck, but I'm not even touching the neck. You can't really see how much the mosaics are overhanging, but I know how much you could feel it with your hands. So I make sure that that's flush with the edge of the neck. This is actually quite time consuming considering that it's mostly maple that I'm sanding, and maple is a very hard wood. And I don't show, but I end up sanding around the whole edge of the bowl. It takes quite some time. The sanding stick actually has two sides. One has more coarse sandpaper, the other side has a finer sandpaper. So in the end, I go over with the finer sandpaper, and then I round off those corners because they get kind of sharp. It's another thing that's annoying, that if you play an instrument where the fingerboard or the binding is kind of sharp, I make sure it's nice and round because the players are very sensitive and they feel those things, including myself. There were a few bumps here and there, especially at that joint where that heart inlay meets the fingerboard. And so I wanted to make sure that was level and that there was no bump there, because that will cause a buzzing when anyone plays up there. So it's really important that that surface is flat and with no bump. That sanding stick actually removes quite a bit of material very quickly, considering how hard mother of pearl is. I'm removing a lot of material. I hope I'm wearing my respirator there. I don't remember. I'm sure I am. Let's see. No, I'm not wearing my respirator. Shame on me. I'm vacuuming that up because you don't want to breathe that in. Now that I fixed that bump up high, I'm going to go through several different grits and bring it down to a very fine grit. I'm making sure it's all level and flat, and that will make it a wonderful surface to play on. Nice hard surface, and it gives a very particular type of projecting sound. If you listen to the video of Michael Ibrahim playing, that's partially part of the sound. It's not just coming from the soundboard, it's actually coming off of how it's playing off of the hard surface of the mother of pearl fingerboard. So that's why I personally love mother of pearl so much. If it's done right and you do all of these things that I'm doing, in the end it's worth it. Alright, it's time to make the nut. Now that the fingerboard's on, and that's your reference for the nut, this saw is actually a double saw, and it's two saws glued together with a spacer in between at the perfect width for the strings, so that I never get that division wrong. If you ever look at the nut on an oud, you notice that the spacings are different. This gives me perfection each time. I don't have to measure anything. At this stage, I come in with a mouse tail file that I've had literally since 2004. It was given to me by a jeweler friend, and miraculously this very fragile tool has not broken. It's held up over the years. And filing these grooves has to be done in such a way you have to angle them where the string is going to go, the direction. So the setup is quite a fickle process, and it has to be perfected, since the setup is probably the most important aspect of the instrument, more than the sound. We've come to a full circle now in terms of where we started. Back to the most nerve-wracking point of the work is the initial stringing of the instrument. That's for a few factors. One is the setup. How good is the setup? Did I get the neck angle perfect? Are there any bumps on their fingerboard? Did I do a good job with the pegs? Those are not the original pegs, but they are original style. So these were used. These are Nahat handle pegs with the mother of pearl dot on the side, just as Nahat used. Someone had changed the pegs over the years to more modern pegs, so these are true to Nahat style. So yeah, and then of course there's a sound. How does it sound? Because that's a new soundboard. How is it going to play off that bowl? Is it going to sound like Nahat? Is it going to sound any good? I never had issues, but are there going to be loose braces causing buzzing? That's never happened to me. So these are things that you are looking for, and you really want to see who this instrument is. What does it have to say? What's its soul? And how that's related to you and the work you did. And here's the moment of truth. And wow, very strong sound initially, which is always a promising and good sign. If it sounds good from the beginning, It could only get better with time after the soundboard settles more and more. The next day you notice the sound is better. Keep tuning, keep tuning. It's not just the strings that are moving, it's the soundboard. And the first week you really notice an improvement in sound. And notice I didn't glue the main rosette in. I wait until after. Maybe I want to make changes inside. Maybe I want to tune the braces, tune the soundboard differently, so that I always have a satisfactory result. I usually wait a few days to glue the rosette in, because the instrument has a lot of surprises. And I also want that open just in case there's other setup issues that I wasn't unaware of. So the oud is kept in a test mode for a while, but here's the final result. Now it's nice to tune these type of ouds down because that's where they like to be instead of 440. Let's tune it down quite a bit. It's like a step, right? Some ouds will die here. I've never actually played this low. Let's see. If you've made it this far, you need to pat yourself on the back, because you've proven you don't really have that ADHD you've been taking all that medication for. All kidding aside, I really appreciate your support. It would mean a lot to me if you would like and subscribe, because it's quite time consuming to produce this content. I have no idea if people like it or not. And if people like it, I'll keep putting out more of this kind of stuff. It's educational and entertainment focused, of course. And it's fun doing it if there's someone else on the other side that likes it. Thank you.